My cousin turned 18 recently. She's in high school. She doesn't have a car, and during her birthday weekend, thought her parents were going to buy her one. They didn't get her one and she was pretty upset. I should note that I'm not very close with my cousin, or the rest of my extended family for that matter. I only heard about this through the grapevine from my dad. Anyway, my cousin texts me on the Friday before her birthday asking if she can take my car. I just leased a new Ford Escape, to the mall and then for an out-of-town road trip with her friends over the weekend. I tell her no. She begs and pleads with me. I tell her no again. My car is for me to drive and for me only. If she wants her own car, she can save up and buy one. She calls me and says that I ruined her birthday and that she's embarrassed because her friends think she got a car for her birthday and she doesn't have one. I don't respond to her and think nothing of it. The weekend comes and I sleep in very late on that Saturday, waking up at 1 p.m. Don't judge. Even though my car is parked in my driveway and my gate is closed, I come to realize that someone egged and TP'd my car. With many eggs and 5 to 6 rolls of TP. And since the weather was warm outside, the raw egg baked into my car, along with the dried up toilet paper, destroying the paint. Since I have security cameras around my house, I decide to go back and watch. At around 9:30ish that morning, I see my cousin and a bunch of her stupid friends vandalizing my car. I'm surprised she didn't smash the windows and poke holes in the tires too. I press charges and my cousin is in legal trouble. Her and her parents are pissed off at me for pressing charges, her parents telling me that she's just a kid, and that she's been through a lot of emotional stress doing virtual schooling for this past year and that I should take that into consideration, and that I should be ashamed of myself for pressing legal charges against my baby cousin. That I'm almost 30 and don't I remember what I was like at that age? I do remember, and I wasn't stupid enough to egg anyone's car. And can't she work something out with me, like doing chores around my house for money if I drop the charges, that she's young, that she doesn't need a felony on her record, etc., and that it was just a prank. Right after I pressed charges, my cousin was calling and texting me over and over saying that this could have been avoided had I let her take my car. I need to add that my cousin already has a felony on her record, a DUI. She's not remorseful of anything. Also, my aunt and uncle will not pay me for the damages. They just want me to drop the charges and pay for everything myself like nothing happened. I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the back side and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later, Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what virgin on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me, and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. So I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first, and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So, in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single-family house, there isn't much soundproofing. And the floors creak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 a.m. since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovelas till midnight. Taking work calls all day and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls. So I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place. He wanted to go speak to them or have me text them, and I said no. For example, one of the early times he stayed over, we went to bed around 10. He wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in, and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their life, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot young 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 22-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is a normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it. And I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone with house kinda money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it. And even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, okay, boomer. Or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house in the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 to drive me to his house. Then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, okay, boomer, to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age. It's more of a mindset thing. I googled his property records for his house and he co-owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit. I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I'm honestly freaking out right now, but I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went. I am 17, female, have a child, Aaliyah. She is 6 years old, with my ex Jacob. He is 33 years old. He has a new girlfriend, Regina. She is 27 years old. We just finalized a court order he requested after meeting her and currently have complete 50//50 custody. Regina has always been a little too involved and believes that since she trains parents to parent, she knows everything. Every time I ask Jacob for help with Aaliyah, he comes with suggestions from Regina instead of workshopping things between the two of us. She has been overstepping for years. Jacob and I are pretty much parallel parenting now and do everything separate, including birthdays and even parent-teacher conferences. He brings Regina with him to his meetings. Regina picks Aaliyah up from school every day because I don't get off work in time, and he did not want to pay for the after-school program, since he did not need it during his time. So of course he jumps at the opportunity to involve Regina. Well, I currently am trying to find a car because I lost mine, so she ends up bringing Aaliyah to my home instead of our meeting point. When she showed up with my daughter, she was being really quiet and looked sad. When I asked her what was wrong, she wouldn't tell me, so I confronted Regina at her car, who said she took away Aaliyah's tablet and TV time because she refused to do her homework and kept her home from cheerleading practice until it was done, so she missed it. Aaliyah loves cheer, and this was just cruel to me. It's something she and Regina connect over, and she got her all into this sport just to use it as a tool to control her? To rip away when she feels like it? She's 6 years old, and that was not her place. I have told her before she was not allowed to discipline, but she said, if she is going to have Regina in her care, she will have to discipline her, and since she does not yell or hit, she doesn't understand the problem. I told her she is not a mom and should not be acting like one. She said this is why Aaliyah has behavior issues in MY care and left. I called Jacob and demanded that Aaliyah is put in the after-school program, and he refused, saying I was being ridiculous. But the parenting plan says no cruel punishments and that only the parents should lead most discipline. If he's doing what she says all the time, how is he leading? Now she is refusing to bring her to my home, and I have to Uber to the meeting point, which is costing me loads of money. Is this something I could take them back to court about? Edit to add that she keeps her for a couple hours after school until I get off. That's how she had enough time to discipline her. Yes, there is a clause about meeting partners. She's been around a few years, that's not the issue. She's just too involved in parenting and has been for a while. I feel like there are certain boundaries that should be in place and certain things only parents should handle, like discipline and PT conferences, etc. She claims she kept trying to get her to do her work, but she just refused, saying she wanted to play on her tablet instead. She should have called me or her dad when this happened. Cheerleading was Regina's idea. She was a cheerleader and pushed for Aaliyah to join. Aaliyah fell in love with it, and now I feel that Regina is using that to control Aaliyah. Do what I say or no cheer. She's 6. If she kept refusing to do her homework, she should have called me to discuss a consequence. If she's alone with Aaliyah during either parent's time, she needs to discuss with both parents what the course of action should be for discipline. She is not a teacher. She is not a professional we are paying for, therefore guidelines need to be followed.